Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. Today we have a Honda EB1900X. Let's see if we can get this thing running once again. Stay tuned. So I was given this from my dad. He has had this I think since the 90s, and he seems to think the engine ran but it would not produce power. He stored it away. It has been stored for a good 20 or so years. So I thought we could bring this into the garage, see if we can get the engine working. If the engine works fine, check for power output and see what kind of power we're getting. He seems to recall this one that he did pull the cover off. I mean, that might have been 20 odd years ago, and I think he deemed this as not repairable. However, he could be mistaken. I have noticed a few things on this, such as the switch is missing, so it might just be something as simple as that is not obviously selecting the right output, in which case you will not get power. I don't think it's going to be that simple, but you just never know. So let's check the oil. That's a good place to start with this, because it should, yeah, it's got oil. In fact, it's got too much oil. I'll just clean this off because I have lifted this up on the bench, so it could just be because I've leaned the engine over. Nope, that's way too much. That is more than double. I can smell a bit of gas, but it doesn't actually seem too bad. That'll do for testing. If it runs okay, that'll need change out, because that is probably 20 to 25 year old engine oil. So the compression, that seems okay. We have no fuel hose, so I'll have to run this off a tank. Let's have a quick look and see how bad it is. So the tank is bone dry and we have a bit of rust. Doesn't look too bad. In the fuel tank, it is starting to separate. In fact, we have a soft spot. So the fuel tank itself, this could be junk. I'll have to obviously inspect this from the inside and see if that's made its way through. We may be okay. It looks pretty clean. The frame obviously is a bit rusty. Not too sure what that's about. The exhaust doesn't seem too bad. The underside of the tank is actually pretty clean. I'm guessing this has obviously caught some rain or some moisture at some point, and it's started to split. But as long as it's okay from the inside, then that should be okay. So it's got the breather and the choke lever is still attached. The carb is not stuck. The springs are present, which is nice, because on these older ones you tend to find springs have been taken off for whatever reason. We have a spark plug. I think it's probably best to check that plug before we continue. We should probably check to see if we have spark actually while we're here. So we have good spark, which is good. Probably best to give that plug a check. It's probably been there for 25 years, so we'll pull that out and have a look. It's actually quite rounded. Don't know if you can make that out on the camera. That spark plug is no good. It's been a long time since I've actually seen a spark plug. It's actually worn out. It's kind of like a hump. The actual tip here should be a nice flat surface with a straight wall. So I think we'll use this one. As you can see, it's got nice straight edges. If it'll sort of focus. Nice straight edges and a straight top. This one is completely rounded over, so definitely glad I checked that, and we'll use this one. Let's double check it is a 0.7, which it is, tight, 0.8, just, which is fine. You want between 0.7 and 0.8 mil for the gap. It's actually a genuine boot, which is nice. In fact, yeah, it's a genuine Honda carb. This actually might be untouched. This actually might be all original parts, which if it is, that's great. So we have spark. Let's check the air filter. So I'm just going to hook up a temporary fuel line. Engine on, choke on, give it a few pulls. Hopefully it'll start up enough so we can check to see if we have voltage. I will also check the 115 outlet. The problem is we have no switch, so I don't know which one is actually active, if any. You have to love a Honda. That I didn't expect it to start that well. I couldn't take the choke fully off, but I mean, come on, that's pretty impressive. So I was not getting power, but I also couldn't read the hertz. So I don't know if these are connected correctly or if that has something to do with it. So I think the next step will be to remove this front panel, which don't know how to do. There's a bolt here, and here. I think that's it. So let's get these off and have a look. So I think this is actually split. So there's these bolts which don't really do much. I think they're holding this in place. So I think this needs to come off to get this to slide up. So let's give that a try. This needs to come off. So it is the next day. I went through quite a lot of steps on this and concluded the back end, the alternator, is junk. So I'll probably just cut all that bit out and just show you guys what I've done and what I found. I have bypassed the switch, so we should have, well, not power, but we should have a reading going to these sockets. We should have a reading down here also. I've removed the brushes, checked the slip rings, and the slip ring reading is very poor. So if we check the slip rings, which are just behind here, we get 9. Now, I don't know the stats for this generator. It is definitely not 9. I would imagine 40 to 60, or let's just say 50. If I got 50, I would be happy. If I got 60, 70, not so much. Less than 40, definitely this is not going to do anything. On the actual stator is, well, as you guys can see, it's 0. Once again, not too sure what it should be, but I would have liked to see 4, 5, something around that range, anything. But that's not good. If we go to the actual socket itself, you should see a reading of maybe 3, 4, 5, and we have 0. So it's connected, it's switched on. If I remove my makeshift switch, as you can see, we have an open circuit. So we have a good engine, and the frame could be salvaged, painted, exhaust and all the bits and bobs actually don't look too bad. It needs a good clean, a good paint, but if we had a back end we could put onto this engine, this would be a pretty decent generator. You have your stator and your rotor, and unfortunately them things are very expensive. I mean, as you can see, the stator's here, but that will wrap all the way around. It is quite a big piece of equipment, and obviously the rotor that goes the full length of the alternator. They're expensive to buy. No one ever really, I don't think, unless you got a very expensive generator, would probably even go to the effort of replacing this. However, I enjoy working on these, so I'm actually quite curious to see what has failed. I'd expect to see some very dark wires, some damaged wires, possibly some signs of damage, hopefully on the stator and the rotor. I've never actually worked on an alternator like this with the plastic cover around. So it's the same principle. I'm guessing these are your 4 bolts. You probably need a puller. It may actually just slide off. We'll find out, I guess. But I'm going to remove the back end, and this should, I would imagine, the whole stator should just slide off, leaving the rotor in place, and we'll get that off and inspect them. So let's get to it. So let's start by removing all these wires, and then we can get this control panel removed. Put these back so I know where they go. Not entirely sure what this controls. I'm guessing this has got something to do possibly with the low oil, maybe the actual kill switch, or this could be the kill switch, or maybe the hertz indicator that's on the control panel. Not entirely sure. These are your, this is what sends out the power to the panel. So we'll get these removed. It's actually indicated there that 1 is white, 2 is red, and 3 is brown. It's actually quite nice that they've done that. So we're going to have to remove these 2 bolts and lift this up out the way. Guess we have to remove, do we have to remove the exhaust? The cover is loose, so I'm guessing this will just come off with the stator. I could remove the exhaust, but would you guys want to remove these bolts? I sure don't. I could maybe remove it at the top here. They look a little better, but we'll see what happens. I've just looked at this and it slides at the bottom, so I think you just need to remove this bolt and this should pull out. Oh well. Probably best to get these removed so I've got a bit more room to work with. Got these screws at the top. I've got one at the top and one at the bottom, so get these removed. It's going to be awkward. Oh wow, that is a lot of rust. Let's get these 4 bolts removed and that should be it. The pin has decided to come out on this one. So we can see the stator, and well, it doesn't look that bad on this side anyway. It's quite dark, but it is old, so maybe it's just that. The slip rings are not great, but they're not that bad. So we have quite a bit of rust. It's only on this section. Oh, there's a bit at the bottom as well. So let's try and get this stator off. I thought it came off with the front plate, but it's stuck on there. This pin's obviously loose, but these three are still sticking on. So how do I get that off here without damaging this stator? Try and get this off. So we have one rotor. Probably should have checked for the ohms reading between this tab and this tab. The slip rings, like I say, they're a bit scuffed up, but don't look that bad. So how easy is this guy going to come off? I have rods somewhere which I can feed in and then impact this down so it'll pull it off, but let's use the old mallet and pull method and see if that works. Oh, this, is that corrosion or is that just dirt and grime from inside the actual alternator itself? It's pretty filthy. So it's 8.5. .8. So can I see any damage other than this white powder which is here, and there's not a lot of it, a tiny bit there, and there is a dark shadow just here. Don't know if you can see that on camera. It's very faint. That's the only thing I can see wrong on this. Other than the wire looks quite dark, but this is, well, this could be 30 years old, so that doesn't really surprise me. Yeah, I wonder if applying 12 volts with this running may bring this back to life. So this possibly could be saved. If you guys can see anything that I'm missing, then obviously put it down below. I'm learning just like you guys with this, so I'm always up for people offering suggestions and advice. But to me, visually, I would be happy putting that in a generator if that was higher. But for all I know, that might be the correct reading for this. Doubt it, it's a bit low, but you never know. That level of rust, I can't imagine that being a problem. So there's that white powder again. It's kind of all over everything, so I don't think that is a problem. This also looks okay. which is a bit irritating. So I think I'm going to go away and do a bit of research and just see if I can find out what readings I should be getting, if any. See if the rotor's okay. Obviously something's at fault. This should actually separate, I think. You can buy these separate, but this is probably hundreds and hundreds of pounds, more than likely. So it's just past 9. So I think I'll call it here tonight and come back tomorrow, hopefully with some good news, but well, I wouldn't hold your breath. So it's been a few days, but I'm back with an update. I've managed to find the stats for this stator, so I'll show you guys what I found, but it's not good. So you have the main windings, which are at the bottom. It is these 3 here, which is what I expected. You have the exciter windings, which are here, and you have the signal windings, which are these 2 here. I can't remember the stats. I will put up an image on the screen if I can find them again, but I think the exciter windings should be about 2 ohms, I think, 1 to 2 ohms, and as you will see, we have a 0. So these 2 are your signal windings, and we have 0. So as you guys would expect, the windings at the bottom, the main windings, we have 0 and 0. So, well, the core, the top and the bottom, this core itself, that's obviously okay, but the actual stator, the coil side of it, is completely junk. So regarding the rotor, this is, I think, was it 9? 8.9. That should be, apparently, looking online, I think it's set about 19 or 20. So where does that leave us? Basically, the alternator side is junk on this. So we have a good engine and a lot of accessories such as a fuel tank and the control panel. Obviously they all work. It is just the back end that's at fault. So this will become a basically parts machine. And it's a Honda engine. It is the older Honda engine, so the chances are that I may not use the parts anytime soon, but you never know. One day I may stumble across a similar generator where the back end is gone and I can reuse the engine. Also, one thing I did not notice is this should have an AVR, and apparently the AVR connects here. So I'm guessing at some point someone's deemed this as being junk and they've needed the AVR and they've taken it, and that's probably what happened to the switch as well. So I guess let's get this put back together, and once back together I might tackle the carb because I would like to get the engine running. It will only run on choke, at least that way I've got a sound engine, it's running and possibly to be used later down the road. Just make sure that pin is lined up. You don't want to force it on if we're not lined up correctly. I have left the brushes disconnected because I do want to check the reading once the engine is running. I will also check to see if anything, which I don't expect, but to see if we get anything from this. I'll leave the end off for the time being and get the fuel tank cleaned and put back on, and then we'll try and give it a start with some fresh fuel and see if we get anything from the back end. So that's not bad. There's a bit of dirt and grime, but not as bad as I expected. So it makes sense to check the sediment bowl. It's a tiny bit of dirt at the bottom, so I'll give that a clean, but the rest seems okay. Gave the tank a little clean, nothing special, but it's a lot better than it was, I guess. So the next step is the carb. I'm just going to pull this off quickly, take it to bits, hopefully I can clean it with carb cleaner, put it back together, and hopefully it should run. Let's get the ball off. Quite a lot of dirt and grime, but the carb looks pretty clean. Sediment ball, pretty clean as well. So yeah, this shouldn't need to go in the ultrasonic. It's probably just a clogged jet. So let's remove them and give them a clean. Let's get this float out of the way. Okay, so I can see a bit of daylight through there. I could remove the emulsion tube, but remove this as well and see if that one's clogged. That ball definitely needs a good clean, I think. So let's inspect the emulsion tube, because this is probably the reason why it is not running off choke. So I have blew this out with some compressed air and it's nice and clean, so it's ready to be reassembled and put back onto the generator. It's not really that important with a generator that has a, well, it doesn't have an idle circuit where this is set, because the governor controls the idle, but I just kind of like to have it almost level with the lever here, so that should be fine. So let's get this on the engine and get it attached to the fuel tank and give it some fuel. So let's get this fuel tank back in. So it goes. Ah, oh no, I thought I may have to take off the control panel, but we should be okay. That is it. And then we have 2 bolts, so I'll get them in and run a fuel line. Probably make more sense to get the fuel line on first before putting the tank down properly. So goes on like so. We have a drip, so I'm going to remove this cheap fuel line and use the correct one. So I've replaced the fuel line for the correct fuel line. It's much stiffer and it will not flex or get in the way of anything, so that is safe and secure. As you can see, there's no kinks because it's quite a thick hose. So let's get the spark plug on and let's fire this up. I've buttoned this up. I actually forgot to do this. I've connected a device so that I can monitor the RPM of the engine, because obviously I can't monitor it from the back end. And regarding the oil, I read it wrong. You don't thread it in, you just basically wipe place like so, do not thread it in, and then check. I mean, it still is high, but it's not as high, so we'll run that for now. I'm only going to run this for a minute or two, so that shouldn't really do much damage. So choke on, engine on, let's give it a go. Frame is back together. I have cleaned the carb again using the ultrasonic, which is what I should have done in the first place, and I've changed the oil, so let's try again. So I spent some more time on this, and unfortunately still cannot get this to produce any power. But it is running perfectly fine now. The engine is brilliant. It is probably the quietest engine I think I've worked on in a very long time. I've given it a quick clean up. It's pretty decent. It's not perfect by any means, but it does not work. If it was working, I probably would have painted the frame and made it look much more presentable, but for the time being this will do. The oil was definitely overdue, so probably best that that got changed out. Fuel tank's cleaned, new fuel line, clean carb and fresh oil. So the engine side and the fuel side is done. We just need to look out for a replacement power end and obviously a AVR and a switch. This generator will probably be used for parts, I would have thought. The frame and the engine especially, they definitely could be used. I would love to have this thing working and producing power, but unfortunately it's just not feasible. You could do it, really, you could buy new parts, but definitely not cost effective. But I've enjoyed working on this. This is the first time I've worked on this particular kind of engine and setup, and I've enjoyed it. I've learned a lot, and that's what I like about stuff like this. So we may not have got the back end fixed, but we have spent some time on the engine and that is running perfect now, so I guess we can call that a win. So we're going to end this one here, guys. So thank you for watching. Like always, please like, subscribe, comment down below, and I'll see you in the next one.